All right, we millennial pause our way into episode 3 of GMST podcast, Getting My Shit Together with Angie Mendez. So I'm really excited that we are on episode 3 because, like I always say, I'm always going to say this, I'm a broken record, 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3. And we are on episode 3, so we are fighting the odds every day. And this episode today, you're going to hear a lot of paper rustling over on the side here because I made a lot of notes. I made 2 full pages of notes because I'm very passionate about today's episode and today's topic. So this episode today will be about addiction and neurodivergence. So both of those topics individually will be discussed, and then how they intersect and everything. This is really passionate to me because I am a neurodivergent person, and in my firsthand experience, I see so vividly how addiction can be very prevalent and neurodivergent people can be very predisposed to addiction. So this is just something I wanted to talk about for a long time. And then the current atmosphere of things, along with what's going on in my life right now, it's very extremely relevant. So bear with me. I'm trying to keep my train of thought going, but really the way my mind works is just a tangled ball of yarn, kind of. So that's what we're working with. So help me untangle it. I'll take a piece, you take a piece, and we'll try to untangle it together, okay? So I have a lot of notes here. I'm gonna have to keep referring to my notes. So one thing I want to get out of the way before we dive into the topic today is a bit of housekeeping that I have just about the podcast in general. So the first podcast and the whole intention when I made the podcast, I wanted it to be able to go on RSS so it could easily link to TikTok, because that's my biggest platform. That's where I'm most active and the place that I'd love to grow besides the podcast. So that's where my first intention was, but things changed because when I tried to upload my second episode, that's when I realized that RSS is a subscription service, they're for profit, and they exist to make money, so they don't allow you to put more than one episode on without signing up to one of their monthly subscription services. And being that I have absolutely no disposable income and have no idea when the next time that might be, I don't want to rely on RSS as a service. So my intention is to get that first episode off of there as soon as I can and get it as a late delayed upload onto this YouTube channel, because where we're at right now and where I'm hoping to completely stay forever is this GMST podcast YouTube channel. So right now, as of recording, we've got 3 subscribers strong. So make sure you I can't even speak. Make sure you subscribe. It really makes a difference. It really helps us build our community. Sorry, I'm stuttering so much today. It's a lot. I have a lot to say, and I always have 20 thoughts at once, all trying to fight to get out of my mouth. So that's why I stutter so much, in case you ever wonder. So this episode, once it goes up, this will be episode 3. This will go up to the YouTube channel, and don't forget to like the episodes, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That's actually way more important than you think, because you want to be notified, and YouTube is honestly not the best at notifying people outside of the notification bell. So make sure you hit that. I really appreciate it. So now into this topic. So why is today's episode about addiction, you might ask? And my answer to that is that you're seeing this episode probably much later than I was expecting to get it up. I wanted it to go up on Tuesday, no, not even Tuesday, Monday, I guess Monday, August 21st. So I'm now recording on the 24th. So that's like 3 days. And basically I had a huge delay because I was having a crisis, honestly. Like, and I sound so chipper right now. And that's because I'm just so happy to get back to the one thing that I committed to in my life. I'm just happy to get back to it because on Monday when I should have been recording, I was going through it like so badly. Like I don't even know where to start, but I've made notes, so let me go back to those and we'll revisit that little experience of why we didn't get the episode on Monday. So to just talk about addiction very broadly, I got a definition from Wikipedia. Take that for what you will. I think Wikipedia is a little bit more legit nowadays than how they considered it back in like high school. We weren't really allowed to like cite it as our source, but Wiki says addiction is generally a I already screwed it up. Generally a neuropsychological disorder defining pervasive and intense urge to engage in maladaptive behaviors, providing immediate sensory rewards despite their harmful consequences. So addiction can take like so many different forms. A lot of types of addictions, most people don't even like consider it as like an addiction, but they all really still are. They all still kind of affect the brain in a similar way. So there's like three kind of types, I guess, or three like big broad categories, I guess I should say, because there's other types as well that are like more specific. So when I mean types, I mean there's behavioral addictions, there's substance addictions, and impulse addictions. So an example of a behavioral addiction is something that we all do, I think, honestly, unless you like have like a brick phone or like not a smartphone or something. We are all so addicted to our phones. I think there's a feature on the phone that says like how many times you picked up the phone in a day. And I've never actually looked at that because I'm kind of terrified to find out how much I pick up my phone. And the weird thing is like I don't be texting anybody really, cause like my phone's shut off, so I really can't. But even, you know, if I had somebody to message, like I don't. And I pick up my phone so much. So imagine if I was like social, like my phone would always be in my hand. And like almost everywhere I go, everybody does have their phone in their hand. It's kind of scary, and none of us kind of like recognize or accept that like as a real addiction, but it is. And onto like substances, obviously we think of like drugs, prescription pills in some cases, alcohol or other drinks, I guess. I've never heard of like if people could get addicted to like a kava or something. I've never had kava. Have you guys had kava? Let me know in the comment if you have, or if you've had like weird, like those weird ayahuasca drink. Like I've never had anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I don't know much about that stuff. And then the third type of addiction is impulse. So, which is like managing emotions or actions. So that's like kind of like an addictive behavior is, kind of falling into those toxic behaviors. And that's something that I really rarely hear discussed. And that's something that I think afflicts more of us than we realize. Cause like I definitely have trouble, like recognizing my emotions and like controlling myself. And like, I find myself sometimes like I'll get impulsive thoughts of things to say that are mean to people. And like, it just comes out before I realize like that I don't want to say that. And that's not a nice thing to say. So yeah. And then beyond those like three overarching types, there's like, you know, examples of different addictions, like, for example, alcohol and tobacco, sex addiction, drugs, video games, and internet addiction. That's something very common that is very normalized, really. Shopping, gambling, and food. So I kind of have a opinion that every single person walking this earth is addicted to something, whether they accept it or not, whether they admit it or not, or whether they tell people or not. Like, I definitely think that I've struggled with like shopping addiction, because I know that like I can't control myself with my money, and people have shamed me really bad for that, to the point where like I don't usually talk about that and I don't tell people about that, and I found a lot of shame and guilt in that. But like, that's just my truth. Like, what more do I have to be ashamed about it? Like, how can I heal it and improve it if I'm like just pretending it's not there? You know what I mean? And I'm sure that a lot of other people are like that too, but it's such a taboo thing that nobody talks about it. So don't feel alone if that's you. So, and that's kind of the point also why I'm making this episode about this topic, because like how I believe everyone is struggling with addiction in some form, that you are not alone, and so many people do feel alone, and they will pour their heart out about almost anything in their life, but keep their addiction like private. You know, why are we doing that? Why can't we help each other heal, you know? So that's my point in being here today, being vulnerable with you guys. So let's see. Oh, and then I looked at some other website too, and they had like the top 10 most addictive like substances, I guess is what this was. And I found this interesting. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but I find it fascinating if there's any accuracy to it. So from most addictive to like, not least addictive, but like starting from most to lesser. Like, so what I'm saying is number 1's the most, but number 10 is not like an innocent thing. You know what I'm saying? So number 1, tobacco. 2, alcohol. 3, marijuana. 4, painkillers. 5, cocaine. 6, heroin. 7, benzodiazepines. Those are like anxiety medications like Xanax or something. 8, stimulants. Probably, I think they mean like amphetamines or, uppers. 9 is inhalants. 10, sedatives. So being that the top 2, alcohol and tobacco, or sorry, the order they put them in was tobacco, then alcohol. That's kind of scary because those 2 things are legal and available widely. On every corner you can get tobacco. At least in my state, in Utah, they don't sell liquor in like a 7-Eleven or something like that. You'd have to go to a state liquor store. But, you know, those things are the most widely available. And that must be so like debilitating for people that struggle with those addictions, that they're just everywhere, you know. My personal thing that I struggle with dependency with is cannabis. So that's number 3 on there. And it's becoming more widely available. But one of the frustrations that I had with it was that, like, you know, it's not like cigarettes. I can't just go to the store and get them like in the middle of the night or whatever. I have to go to a specific store at a specific time and have a specific med card. They're like, they put me through a lot more steps to get my medical cannabis than like somebody who just wants to go smoke a cig, right? So, and 4 is, you know, being painkillers. Those primarily start with a doctor or a pharmacy. So those, you know, starts as something innocuous, right? You get hurt, you're in pain, you're trying to heal your like broken leg or whatever, and then next thing you know, you're addicted to painkillers. So I feel like it's just so easy to fall down the hole. Like, I think a lot of the time society or politicians or religious leaders or whoever it is, it's always somebody. They want us to look at addicts like they're just some bad people, like they're a criminal, like they failed, like they can't like keep their impulses together. Like, we don't need to look at people in that light, you know. It's not always, you know, such a ugly story like that. I just don't believe that there's so much bad in people, how they want us to believe like this. So, Let's see, how long? Okay. So I gave myself, in my notes, I gave myself about a time frame of how long I wanted to talk about each section. And I've talked about this first section about just addiction in general, what types of addiction there are, and like the most addictive things. We've spent about 15 minutes on that. So I feel comfortable moving on. I've been around addicts like my whole life. I won't go like super into detail, like that's somebody else's story to tell, exactly not mine, but I will tell my story of the experience growing up around that type of people and how that affected me and stuff like that, because that is my story to tell, and this is my platform, and nobody can take that away from me, and nobody can tell me what to say, but I will have respect for other people who maybe don't want their business out there. But at a very, very young age, I did see with my own eyes people doing hard drugs in front of me. And because I was so young and knew nothing about what I was seeing, I kind of couldn't process or understand what I was seeing. Because now, knowing what I know now, I witnessed people do cocaine. And I didn't understand why anybody, would have a straw and not be drinking out of it, right? Like as a little kid, like I was about 6 or 7 years old, and like straws are for drinking, right? But the straw that I saw was going up somebody's nose, and then like they weren't drinking. And I just was completely confused about everything I saw. Like, and the drugs itself, I thought it was salt. When I'm seeing something white, I think it's salt. I don't know. So I thought people were like, and I guess you drink through a straw, but I thought people were like blowing salt around with straws. Like imagine like literally a bunch of adults like get together and be like, yeah, let's blow salt with straws. It sounds crazy from the perspective of a child. And so that's why it's like hard for kids to see stuff like that, because then they might like go and draw it at school, or, different problems can come up. At the time, like when I was closer to that age, but not that young, like when I was old enough to kind of process what I saw, I felt frustrated. Like, why can't you just tell kids, like, why can't you just explain to them like what they're seeing? But then there's limitations to that too, because it's to protect the adults. Adults who are doing illicit things around kids, they don't want to explain it to the kids, because then the kids could inadvertently get them in trouble. So now, being far removed, I see why everything was done the way it was done. But it was very hard and took a long time for me to process what I saw and understand. And then many years after that to process and understand why somebody would even want to use those drugs. Because having seen people use that same drug so many times, I never personally consumed it myself. And I'm not trying to put myself above anybody. That's not my intention. I'm just saying that this perspective led to me not using this substance. But if I had not seen those people using the substance and had the experience that I do around people and that type of behavior, then maybe, who knows, I might have tried it at some point in adulthood. But I'm fortunate in my situation that I never tried it, because I've seen how debilitating it can be for people in their life, how people prioritize it, and especially with like cocaine, for example, the way that people behave on it, they're just not anybody I want to be around, honestly. Like, no offense, I really apologize if you are a user of that and I'm mischaracterizing your behavior. I apologize. This is just my experience. So basically, I think when we see people use when we're so young, I think it really increases the likelihood that we may use some substances in the future. I really believe that, because it's so normalized and it's like destigmatized, I guess, in a sense. So my first experiences with substances, I just remembered taking cigarettes out of the ashtray to like try them, which is so gross. But kids get so curious. Like, it's almost like I'd rather let a kid like literally try to smoke a cigarette than like let them like dig through the ashtray. But you know, I don't have kids, and like I always have like the weird childless perspective that like parents don't understand. So yeah, that's just what it is, you know. So the first time I was like offered any kind of substances, this was in 7th grade. I had a neighbor who, she was like a little faster than me, like with trying to grow up too fast and stuff. Like, because when I was in 7th grade, like I was still very much like a little baby. Like I was not like really precocious at all, like in any way that I can think of. Like I was literally writing little Harry Potter stories like as my hobby. So I was like a really good kid. But this girl, she down the street, she was like hanging out with these little hood rat girls, and I don't know how, because they didn't have any jobs, and I don't know how they had any money. So I don't know how they had any weed, but like they were like smoking weed in like their other friend's house that like lived on my street. And they were like, I don't know, she was like trying to invite me over there, but then like, I don't know if it was that I wasn't cool because like I didn't want to come and like smoke weed with them, because I had so much clarity. Like in that moment, I remember being on the tracks train with that girl and her telling me, oh, you need to try weed, like it's gonna like relax you and it's gonna do this and that and like all these great things. And it just sounded like way too good to be true, and just sounded like, honestly, like bullshit. Like I was just thinking like, there's no way it's that good. Like there's, you know, this is bullshit. Like I don't need that. Like I'm gonna get addicted or whatever. And so like I kind of thought I was just like being a prude for a while. Like once I did try it, looking back on that moment, thinking like, oh, I was such a goody goody, like I didn't want to try it. But honestly, that was the most clarity that I had about the whole situation, was when I was like 12 to be like, no, I'm not gonna try that, I'm gonna get addicted. Like, because it, and like when you do try it and you do see like the good parts of it or the fun parts of it, then you kind of think like, oh no, I should have tried it, this is great for me. But not realizing it is very habit forming, and it can be very like something you depend on a lot. And I don't know, it was just a different time. Like things weren't legal back then. Like you always had to go through the black market, wait around for some weird sketchy person and get some product that you like don't even know if you can trust, kind of thing. So it just was a different time, I guess. But yeah, I just kind of went from like very like clear mind to like totally just fell for it, like fell for the romance of cannabis. And I think a lot of teenagers do too. Like they'll just be like, wow, weed is the coolest thing ever, like this changed my whole life, like I'm so chill. But it has bad things about it. Like obviously it's medicine too, and however you use it, you can use it like holistically or you can use it debilitatingly. Like that's all in you and how you use it and everything and your intention with it. So keep that in mind. And that's with all substances too. Like this is just the substance that I know best. So yeah. And then let's see, and part of it too was like the people who were offering it to me the first times, like I didn't really trust them as much. The first time I actually got high from smoking weed, like it was with 2 girls that I really trusted at the time. Yeah, if you do take substances for the first time, make sure it's with someone you trust, because that's very important. So now I'd like to get into what are the causes of addiction, because it's not a moral failure. Like no matter how much they want to tell you that it is, it's just not. Like you don't need to be shamed for addiction. Like it's something that almost everybody experiences at some point. I don't feel like you can get away from it. So these causes, I should have wrote down what websites I got this info from. Sorry, guys. But just know these are as legit as I can come up with. And any corrections are welcome in the comments, please. I kind of like that we're on YouTube so that I can get some feedback, because I didn't like just having my stuff on Spotify and then nobody can like give me feedback and stuff. So genetics, our number one cause. Number 2 is environmental factors. Number 3, trauma. Such a big one. And we all have trauma. Number 4 is mental health disorders. Number 5 is brain changes. So that can also include brain injury, traumatic brain injury and stuff like that. So for people who are neurodivergent, who either have autism spectrum disorder or what is it called? The one that I have them both, but the other one, ADHD, attention deficit, hyperactive disorders, people with those types of disorders, they are 2 times more likely to struggle with addiction than neurotypical people. So that's something so key to recognize, because if you're living with both of those situations, if you're living with addiction and you're neurodivergent, just knowing that, the likelihood of your addiction is so helpful to know that about yourself, because to know that this is not your fault, that you are predisposed to this type of thing and that you're not the cause of it. And these conditions, are characterized by low dopamine. So that's a huge reason why people can easily fall into different addictions. Oh my gosh, my cheek squelched randomly, so that sounded really gross. So I'm sorry. So for me personally, the benefits that I have from the substances that I prefer, obviously cannabis is what works for me and what people would say I have an addiction to, that it benefits me to help with my sensory issues. I get sensory overload really bad, and it's very hard for me to function just from my sensory overload alone. So cannabis helps me so much with that. It's really life-changing the way that it does help me. And with my depression and anxiety, so it's kind of complicated. When I am not using cannabis, I'm very depressed, but my anxiety is not as bad. But when I do use it, to help my sensory overload and other things, it does make my anxiety worse, but it alleviates a lot of my depression. And it also helps me so much with my rumination and intrusive thoughts. When I am not able to use cannabis, my rumination just goes wild. It's on a 24-hour loop of just the most ugliest things you've ever heard in your life, played on a loop in my brain. And so I need respite from that. I really do. It's hard for us to know what the other one is dealing with, because obviously we can't hear each other's stream of consciousness, but just trust me and just know that if you knew the messages and that my brain speaks to me, it sounds kind of crazy, but it's just I help myself with cannabis to alleviate that. So going into the next section, this is really going to tie in and really hit home for what I just said. One thing quickly before we move on, the bad effects of cannabis for me. I went through a situation this week where I was not able to obtain my medicine, and it really debilitated me in a way that I've never experienced this extreme before. I've dealt with smaller extents of this, but this was really an episode that it's very hard to put into words what I experienced, and it's very hard for me to make myself understood and not open myself to judgment, I guess. And that's kind of the whole point of this episode, is we're removing judgment out of this equation. So if you do continue to judge me in this episode, just know that I hope your heart heals, and I hope that you take something away from this episode, that you can stop judging people with this issue, because it could easily be you. So I believe it was like on Saturday, I got invited to concert with my friend. It was so fun and so awesome. But that night I happened to, not take care of myself. I did not eat. And then I also happened to run out of the cannabis, my medicine that I have. So the next day I really kind of got sick. That's the best way I can describe it. And it was withdrawals. And everybody kept asking me like, oh, are you sick? Are you sick? Like thinking I got sick from the concert, but it really wasn't that at all. I had trouble the first night sleeping. Actually, Saturday night I was okay. It was Sunday night. Sorry, I'm getting it all kind of mixed up because it was just like, it was a blur, but also like it like went on for so long that it was kind of like just torture. Long story short, I couldn't keep anything in my stomach. I threw up all my water, and because I hadn't eaten, then I started to throw up bile. It was really unpleasant, and my stomach just was kind of like, it just felt like my stomach was like squeezing itself like empty. It was horrible. And then eventually I wouldn't be able to sleep either, so the combination of not eating, not sleeping, and withdrawal, it was all so horrible, and it put me in a really deep dark spiral where I had a lot of S-word ideation. I'm not sure if that S-word is gonna get me like in trouble on YouTube, so I'm just gonna like not say it, but you guys kind of know what I'm talking about, ideation. So I was having really dark thoughts of not wanting to be here, and it was really scary, and I knew that I needed to like fix it. I needed to like get out of withdrawal because my intention was not to go sober. Like I'm really not in a place where I can make that choice to like get sober, and I really hope that I can get in that place eventually when the time is right, because that's such a personal thing to get sober and to realize that you want to or that you need to, and making that choice for yourself. It's a very powerful thing, and nobody but you can know when that time is right for you. So it's very hard. And it's very hard, like, we all have loved ones around us that we want to see get sober, but the more you push them toward it, they might just veer away. So you have to be very careful with people in those situations. And yeah, eventually I was asking my family for help because like I knew that this was like a very dangerous situation for me to be in. As fragile as I was and everything going on. And it seemed like my family was minimizing my issue. And so I had to turn to friends for help, which was honestly humiliating. But one thing, I don't want anybody to be afraid to ask for help. So that's so important. And I've been shamed so many times for asking for help that it hurts. It hurts me to like say it. It hurts me to suggest for you to ask for help. But you just have to do it. You just have to do it. You can't listen to anybody. You can't, because it will just destroy you if you continue to listen to these people. So how this ties in to all of this, okay. So the last thing that I was talking about, sorry, I had like a brain fart, but the next section is about like these TikToks that I saw that really, really hit home in the same like vein. It's really hard because you either get this or you just don't. Like, I feel like half of the people that are going to listen to this are just going to walk away thinking, well, she's an addict, and then like just judge me and just like, not take in any of the important parts. But I really want to get through to you guys on this. So there's a TikTok that I saw that was from a creator called Peach PRC. I believe she's like a popular musician, if I'm not wrong. She made these videos that went super viral, and they were super vulnerable and just like so raw, and like I just appreciate her so much for making these videos and telling her story and everything, because I related so much to it, and I know so many people did too. Like hundreds of thousands out there are dealing with this just on TikTok alone. So imagine how many in the world, you know? So a lot of the things that she talks about is like how much harder things are for her than like everybody else. She struggles with executive dysfunction. She has extreme anxiety and dysregulation. Her therapy and her meds don't seem to be helping her, which I related so much with that because, I went to my therapy and I went to a psychiatrist and I didn't feel much further ahead than like where I started, not to say that they're not beneficial. I do recommend them. I recommend everybody try therapy, not necessarily meds if you feel meds are right for you, but I would never push meds on somebody because people push them on me like crazy. And so, Peach also talks about rumination and shame at every interaction she has, and that's something that's so relatable. Like, people don't talk about it, and I feel like neurotypicals, they like a lot of the time they don't understand it because they are so used to just like bulldozing through life, and like they're just used to having like all these awkward interactions and just like letting it go completely. And like for me, even if like an interaction is perfect, somehow, some way, I'm going to find something wrong with it and feel really uncomfortable with it and feel that same humiliation and shame. And it makes you want to go out less and less, like every time it happens. And it happens every time. But the main thing that Peach talks about that is so like hits home, that she has such a hard time doing things without being under the influence. So for her, I guess that means like alcohol. For a lot of us, that's different things. And it wasn't just her that made the TikTok. Her TikTok did have like a huge response to it, and a lot of people coming out and relating so much to it. And I felt very, very appreciative of her message and her vulnerability, because it's not easy to come on the internet and just put your whole heart out there and like the most ugly things that you struggle with, like, because of course, on the internet, there's ugly people that are gonna come and kick you when you're down. But that doesn't matter, because if you can at least reach one person that will not feel so alone, that like you guys are dealing with the same thing, then let everybody come and kick me. Like, I will be kicked as long as I can like reach one person and help them, So, there's another TikToker who saw Peach's video and responded to it. Her handle was like, Allie Priestley is back. So she made this response and, acknowledging how much of an issue this really is, and, how very few, but the very precious therapists out in the world recognize that there's some of us in the world that need, whatever it is in this case, need to sip wine all day, or need to use medical cannabis, or whatever substance that you are, dealing with, just to get through our day, so that we can exist on this planet, just to do the tiniest things, just to function. Like, it's not like the people who have to sip wine all day, or the people who need medical cannabis. It's not like they're out there like partying and having fun and just like neglecting their whole life and everything. This is so they can like do the simplest things, like brushing their teeth, showering, just basic human functioning. And I have such issue with the idea that people are going to look at those people and judge them and mischaracterize what they're going through. And even like people in my life, people I know that have been addicts, that still look at people in this situation and like call them debilitating names like junkies, crackhead, whatever, like shaming them for that when they've been there. How can you forget? How can you forget what you went through? I don't understand that. It just boggles my mind. And so Allie was referring to this particular, it was Sarah Hendrickx on YouTube. She has done a lot of like different speeches on this topic, and I'm gonna check her out as well. And that she consulted her patient who was struggling with this issue, who needed to sip alcohol all day to get their job done. That instead of shaming him, which a lot of therapists would do, or pushing him to get sober, because that's really not an option for some people. Some people don't have that option to get sober. And depending on the substance, it can be like fatal, or very harmful. People can have seizures, different sicknesses from like heroin. Like some people have to be on like Suboxone to be able to function. These are different medicines that people can get on to get off of certain substances. But your body, once your body has like certain things in your bloodstream and in your brain, like you literally need certain things to continue. It's very scary. But this Sarah Hendrickx, she consulted her patient on how to dose the alcohol so that he can get through his day and continue to live his life. And this is so crucial because this patient would literally leave this planet if not for the support of this therapist, and this plan that they've made together. I feel like it's just so very rare to see these situations where people really actually work with you in your addiction and not give up on you. Like, I feel like almost given up on when it comes to seeking medication for my conditions, because honestly, I'm not even exactly diagnosed. Like, the only thing I have diagnosed is anxiety. And so that I have medicine for that I do not like to take. And that is actually like not good for me to have in my possession, because I'm afraid that if I had a crisis that I might try to take it. But I did calculate, and I know that the amount that I have is not enough to hurt me. So don't be worried about me, okay, you guys? So we can't all get like brain scans to tell us exactly, what's wrong with our brains. Those of us who can, that's a very amazing, fortunate privilege to have, and hopefully someday I can get my brain scanned to kind of figure out more about like what am I struggling with, because we're all struggling with something, and to get an actual visual, like a real picture of what that is, that's such a blessing that I hope that we all get. I hope we all can get a brain scan someday. So, yeah. I really want to explain the point to not judge these people, because nobody woke up one day and thought, I'm gonna just be a piece of shit, I'm gonna use substances and become an addict. Like, nobody chooses that, Addiction finds us, in so many corners of the planet, in so many ways, from so many vulnerabilities. Like, it's just not worth judging each other, And I apologize if anything I've said has come off judgmental, because that's not my intention. So I think it's important to realize, the effect of these substances in our lives, and how we can, be better every day, and how we can help each other be better, and how we can help each other treat each other better too. And to give each other compassion, because there's just too much judgment. We could all so easily be in each other's shoes. So easily. And I think we should celebrate sobriety. Absolutely, absolutely. I have the utmost respect for sober people. But keep in mind too that like a lot of people who, are able to get off of hard substances, then they develop, passions for food, so we all have vices. We all indulge, we all enjoy. We all have brains with like a reward center. Like, how can you not want a reward, So, I think we need to realize, survival. Survival is always our main number one focus. And if there's substances that can help us to survive, man, why should we be shamed for preserving ourselves, surviving, And sobriety should be celebrated as a choice, yes, versus withdrawal. I think it's kind of cruel to see people around you who do not want to be withdrawing, and you have the power to help them, and you let them withdraw because you want them sober. That's not your choice to make. That's their choice. That's their body. You make your choices with your body. That's good for you. But you should be there for them the second that they choose sobriety. But you also be there to keep them alive. Keep your people alive around you. How many times have we had people around us die and we just didn't even know that they were struggling? I feel like we have like a culture where everybody thinks that the other person should approach them first. And it isolates us all. And then, we isolate ourselves. And we don't need to do that. It's so sad. We should be together and support each other. That's what I think. So I'm going to check out that Sarah Hendrickx that Ali Priestley recommended. And that's all today on the addiction and neurodivergence episode. I'm sorry it went at kind of such a slow pace at the end, but I really appreciate you guys. I'm hoping to start getting video episodes. I was recording them. I recorded 2 video episodes before. This 3rd episode, I only recorded audio just to make it easier on my computer to get processing time up a little faster. But in the future, I would love to do video episodes. And I just really appreciate you guys. I feel like I've had a lot of frustration lately, like kind of with some of my family, because people have a habit of like asking about me and not asking me, which is silly because they're always asking people who get things mixed up and confused about me, and I'm the one that knows best about myself. So if you got any questions, lob them to me directly and we can keep in touch. But I feel like I've been very close to the edge lately, like, so to speak. I don't feel that way today, but for like the last week or so, I felt very low and very alone. And part of that's my fault. I isolate myself quite a bit, which I know I shouldn't. Part of it is to like protect myself. Like, if anything ever happened to me, the last thing I want is like a bunch of people who are like close to me to be all like sad about it. So that's one reason why I'm like, the fewer people I have around me, the less people that will be like sad if like whatever. But there's like not any risk of anything, because I've thought in my head like of every plan that people could think of, and I ruled every single one out because I'm like, well, I don't want to splat myself because that's gross. And that's like traumatic for other people. That's harmful. And I just don't even want to like, I don't want to harm myself. I don't want to do that. So I hope you guys know that I am safe. I don't want to hurt myself. I want to heal and get better. But there's a lot of times where I did feel that way. And like, it's hard because the internet is such a place where people post their wins and not as much a place where people are vulnerable with the ugly side and the ugly truth and just what's really, really going on. It's like a highlight reel. And like, I never like conform to that because I don't have that much to highlight. Like, I have a lot to bitch about. But yeah, just sometimes I have to get like really honest with you guys. But the internet doesn't always let me do that. It's that newspeak shit from like 1984 where like the internet's like, you can't say this word, this word, this word, this word, or you're like banned. So it's like impossible for me to be honest with you guys. And then certain things, if I said the way I truly feel, it's like those things can get me like, I don't know. I don't want to get locked up in a mental hospital and stuff like that. Like, who knows? I mean, if you guys have any experience with institutions like that, let me know what your experience was, because I hear very conflicting things. I've heard that it helps people so much, and I've heard that like you get stuck there for days and that it's way traumatic and all kind of stuff, but I just don't have any experience with that. So please, if you're open to sharing your experience, I'd love to, read your comment, or I'm kind of open to having guests on the show. I just don't know logistically how to make that happen yet. I don't know how to get the footage and do the stuff with the technology yet, but I would love to like have guests on the show someday and like talk to other people, in these vulnerable situations. There's a lot of people, like I always say, that will look down on me and think what they want, but I really feel like these conversations are valuable to people and I want to continue to have them. So I really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. This is the GMST podcast YouTube channel, and that's where we're always going to do our uploads from here on out. I'm hoping to get episode 1 stripped for RSS and uploaded here as soon as possible. You can find me also on Instagram at GMST podcast and TikTok at World of GUERA. That's World of Weta. And I hope you guys have a productive and fabulous day. Bye-bye.